What's poppin', family? It's your boy Curse back with another video. And today we're doing public versus private. So if you'll notice, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. That is what is on any bill. You can look it up and you will see it noticed, or so you'll see it printed on there. You'll notice that it's on every single one. And basically, what it is saying, right? So if we break down a couple terms, the first one breaking down debt. Now, debt comes from the Latin debitum, which means something owed. It's the past participle of debere, which means owe. Now, public comes from late Middle English, from Old French, from Latin, publicus. It's a blend of publicus, of the people, and from populus, people, and pubes, adult, right? So essentially, to be part of the public means to be of the people, right? Now, private. What's the difference with private? Private means not acting in an official capacity. From Latin privitas, withdrawn from public life. So now, if we just said public means of the people and private is withdrawn from public life, that would therefore mean that private, privitas, is withdrawn from the people, the life of the people. So, understanding contracts. When does a contract exist, right? And whenever a party files a suit claiming a breach of contract, the first question the judge must answer is whether a contract existed in the first place. So, the first thing that has to exist is an offer. One of the parties made a promise to do or refrain from doing some specified action in the future. Now, the second thing we have to have is consideration. Something of value was promised in exchange for the specified action or non action. This can take the form of a significant expenditure of money or effort, a promise to perform some service, an agreement not to do something, or reliance on the promise. Consideration is the value that induces the parties to enter into the contract. So now, consideration, for instance, would be what am I gaining in exchange, right? If I am offering to cut your grass for $25, I am gaining the $25 and you are gaining the performance of me cutting your grass. Now, the existence of consideration distinguishes a contract from a gift. A gift is a voluntary and gratuitous transfer of property from one person to another without something of value promised in return. Failure to follow through on a promise to make a gift is not enforceable as a breach of contract because there is no consideration for the promise. The third thing we must have is acceptance. So the offer had to be accepted unambiguously. Acceptance may be expressed through words, deeds, or performance as called for in the contract. Generally, the acceptance must mirror the terms of the offer. So, if the contract involves a sale of goods, i.e., items that are movable, between merchants, then the acceptance does not have to mirror the terms of the offer for a valid contract to exist unless A, the terms of the acceptance significantly alter the original contract, or B, the offerer objects within a reasonable time. Now, if either of these happen, then again, we don't have a valid contract. And it all goes back to needing these items to be met in order to have a legally binding contract, right? So let's say, for example, we have Justice. Justice is part of the public. He's age 12. And then we have Justice's parents, also members of the public. And then we have a private bookstore, right? So when we define parent, parent comes from Old French or from Latin parent, which means bringing forth. Okay? So who or what are you bringing forth? Well, you would be bringing forth a child. Okay? You would be parenting a child and bringing them forth. What would you be bringing them to? And that would be the age of consent. So if someone has sold something to a minor based on a transaction that the child did not have permission to perform, the parents may demand that the sale be canceled. The need for a parent's consent depends on the magnitude and type of purchase as well as the child's age. If your child has made a purchase that he or she should not have been allowed to make, the seller is responsible. So now, if we just let Justice go in and buy a book and he didn't have permission, his parents can demand that the sale be canceled. So, liability is the state of being responsible for something, especially by law. Okay? The state of being responsible for something. So, prior to the age of consent, the liability is on Justice's parents. Justice's parents assume the role as guardians of Justice until he reaches the age of consent and can enter into contracts on his own behalf. Liabilities are a vital aspect of a company because they are used to finance operations and pay for large expansions. They can also make transactions between businesses more efficient. For example, in most cases, if a wine seller supplies a case of wine to a restaurant, it does not demand payment when it delivers the goods. Rather, it invoices the restaurant for the purchase to streamline the drop off and make paying easier for the restaurant. The outstanding money that the restaurant owes to its wine supplier is considered a liability. In contrast, the wine supplier considers the money it is owed to be an asset. Okay, so you got to understand there's always two sides. When a debt is issued, that is going off the books from one company, from one private entity to another. One is classifying it as an asset, one is classifying it as a liability. So liabilities are determined, right? And or how is a liability determined? And most accidents happen because someone was negligent. However, proving that someone was careless or negligent and therefore liable for an accident or injury can be complicated. Essentially, if one person involved in an accident was more careless than another, that person must pay for at least a portion of the damages suffered by the more careful person. We see this with most commonly in insurance and car accidents, right? The person usually responsible for the car accident or whoever had more fault in the car accident is the one who gets saddled with the bill. Now, there's a quote here from Thomas Jefferson which says, "Ignorance of the law is no excuse in any country. If it were, the laws would lose their effect because it can always be pretended." Okay, so you got to understand here, family, that a birth certificate, your birth certificate, right, acts as a security interest. And the legal portion of the birth certificate shows the child's name, date of birth, parents' names, among other things. But what it really does is it establishes state residency and U.S. citizenship. It provides legal identity. A birth certificate is required for Social Security, Medicaid, school enrollment, driver's license, social services such as marriage license, and more. In addition, it serves as proof of relationship to parents, which is required for child support services. Now, a security interest is a legal right granted by a debtor to a creditor over the debtor's property, usually referred to as the collateral, which enables the creditor to have recourse to the property if the debtor defaults in making payment or otherwise performing the secured obligations. This is important because default Default can also be assumed as breaking the law. Say, for instance, if you have a driver's license and you speed, you are thereby defaulting in that contract. And so an officer can then give you a ticket, right? And you got to understand that children start life as totally dependent beings. They must rely on adults for the nurture and guidance they need to grow towards independence. Now, if this can not be fulfilled in a child's family, the state will step in and find an alternative or a better option, right? So the definition of a corpse is a human or animal body, whether living or dead. A dead body, especially that of a human being. Definition of a corporation. Corpse corporation. A company or group of people authorized to act as a single entity. Articles of incorporation. These are documents containing the company name, purpose, stock amounts and types, the address of the registered agent, and the person incorporating the company. The articles of incorporation are defined as the basic charter of a corporation. In Delaware, the articles of incorporation are called the Certificate of Incorporation. They are the same thing. Think of this as the birth certificate of your company. So, if you can now get a birth certificate for a company and create an entirely separate entity, a private business, you have to understand how the age of consent all plays. Again, age of consent is when a security interest reaches a point of maturity. Up until this point, the child cannot question his own interests because he is under voluntary servitude, according to the 13th Amendment. So understand that debt means death. It is only through debt that money ever gets created in today's society. And through the taxation of this debt, it becomes converted from private to legal tender. Now, under the 13th Amendment, involuntary servitude is prohibited, which means that voluntary servitude is allowed by the 13th Amendment. So, what this means is that as a child, you were placed under voluntary servitude of your parents, whom are employed by the ultimate parent corporation, in this case, the United States. And since the United States is acting as the parent corporation, the states would then fall under them, and the organizations and governments, factions that fall under them, would all trickle down until it gets to you. And when it comes to there, right? They're being defined as anyone who would legally exploit people's ignorance on the significance of government given benefits, being the foundation for baiting the public to come under governmental fleecing and control through the aegis of commercial law. So we currently reside within the Sea of Commerce. And this Sea of Commerce is something that allows us to sustain ourselves, but at the same time, you can get washed up or under the current if you are not prepared and if you are not hip to what is going on. Understand that your children are not truly your children. They belong to the state. That's why if at any point they get wind of children being abused, mistreated, the state will step in and remove the children from a home. This is because they ultimately belong to the state. From a legal standpoint, this is how the law is structured. Everything is a contract. Whenever somebody comes up to you and they want to fight, right? They're in an argumentative mood. What they're doing is they are offering to create a verbal contract with you. And it happens this fast. So somebody comes up, they're yelling, "Oh, you did this, woo de woo." Okay. They are offering for you to match that energy, that negative energy, in the form of a performance. You must perform that energy for that contract to be compliant. Now, consideration is they get somebody to be on the same level as them. And since somebody will be on the same level as them, they will not feel lonely in acting out in that negative low vibrational energy. So in their mind, they're thinking, oh, well, if I can get somebody else to act the same way I'm acting, I'm justified, right? But if you decline that contract and you don't act out that performance, what happens is they are left with that energy and you are left with your energy rather than performing the energy that they wanted you to. So you still retain your power. But if you gave your power away, i.e., you lost your temper, you lost, i.e., you gave it away to somebody. That what was given to them, that was the consideration for them. That's what they gained in exchange for that contract. So understand, family, that every aspect of what we do is a contract. And if you don't like the way somebody makes you feel, you need to understand what type of contract you're putting yourself into by being around that person's energy, because a verbal contract is just as easy to create, if not easier, than a physical one. And you can't get so caught up on thinking that paper contracts are the only form of contracts. We form contracts and bonds every single day. We are just not aware of the contracts we're signing, and everything ties back to the spiritual meaning. Everything has a spiritual meaning. Every behavior, every action, there's a spiritual root behind it. And when you understand that if you appear to be a child, i.e., you can only focus on what you've been given and what's in front of you, then your parent corporation, i.e., the United States, because your job is being a citizen, being a U.S. citizen, that is a job. You are expected to be a public official. You have every right to be, right? That is your right as a U.S. citizen. So since you have this privilege, you are expected to pay for the public debt so long as you are part of the public. If you are a private individual, you become seen in the eyes of the law as another parent helping take care of other babies because you are the responsible one. You are the business owner, right? So the US will give you kickbacks, will give you different tax breaks, will give you different benefits because you're taking care of the babies, i.e., the public, the dead, because they are incapable of taking care of themselves. The government says, "Oh, you need our benefits? Okay, here it is, but why do you need them? You're mentally incompetent. You're not capable of taking care of yourself. So we'll take care of you. But in exchange, these are the rules and regulations you must live by." And those rules and regulations are highly restrictive and can be detrimental towards your culture, your beliefs, your spirituality, and your growth as a human. So you have to understand that you are nothing and everything all at once. You are the law. You are every aspect and every facet of your life. So whenever you try and run from a certain aspect, what you're really doing is you're running from yourself. And in doing so, you're not allowing yourself to experience the challenge and the growth that is gained from overcoming such difficult circumstances. Because in this life, it's not about what you achieve, it's about what you overcome. Everybody wants to hear what you overcome because achievements can very quickly turn into the root of envy for those who do not have those same achievements. But when you overcome poverty, when you overcome racism, stereotypes, all these things, you get put into a different category because you identify the human element and you rose above it. You singled out the commonality of struggle, of poverty, and you rose above it. Therefore, if you can do it, anybody can do it. And you act as an individual beacon of light and growth just through your excellence and just through putting yourself off in a better position. You can't help anybody till you're in a position to be giving people those opportunities and giving people the help that needs to be given out. But you must first put yourself in that position, and you can't feel bad for doing it because you are the one accepting liabilities if you are an adult. So before then, it is up to your parents. But once you are able to accept any type of liabilities, it's on you. Your awareness is on you. And ignorance of the law is not an excuse, family. You got to do your studying. You got to get your game up. And you got to understand that life can be exactly as you want it to be. But the first thing you need to do is to take control of your private side and set things up so that you have a public side and a private side, because we need both. You need to declare that you are not a person that needs to be taken care of. You are self sufficient. You can do things on your own. You are mentally competent to do things on your own. Okay? If you go to a court of law, you can then defend yourself because, again, who would know your story better than you? Certainly not a lawyer. But at the end of the day, this is all a game. You see, courts are where we play games. That's why they call it test of money, test of money. You're going to test your money. If you have enough money, you can pretty much beat any charge. This is how our society works, and it's best that you understand it and become intimate with it so that you may understand how to go around and move and manipulate the pieces you need to. So understand, family, double check your contracts before you sign that, before you put that sin in motion. Okay? So make sure that everything going out is what you want to go out. And as long as it's what you want, there shouldn't be no issues when you begin to manifest within the physical realm the people, places, and things that get you closer to fulfilling that which lies within your heart, the message and the soul purpose etched on the inside of your heart. So, peace and blessings. Till next time, family. Peace.